When I reviewed the Skoda Enyaq back in 2021, I was actually left really impressed by that larger size SUV. Even till this day, I still reference it. But now we've got its smaller sibling, the Elroq. Prices at the time of filming and in the UK start from roughly £31,500 and extend up to £41,500. That is, of course, without adding any additional options. As you'll be able to see over here, you've got a variety of different trims and battery pack configurations, which will affect the amount of range and also what you're actually getting. Now, I would also like to point out that you've got a 3-year warranty where 2 of the first years give you unlimited mileage, while the 3rd year goes to 60,000. You can also get an extended warranty for 4 to 5 years that ranges between £300 to £630. You've also got a 3-year paint warranty with 12 years on the body and 8-year for the battery pack. Now, in this review, which will be covered in such a format, I'll be looking to see if the Elroq is actually worth its price tag and, of course, how it compares to some of its key competitors. So to kick things off, let's talk about its electric range. And here, depending on which trim level you go for, you'll have different battery pack configurations. Within the 50 model, you've got a 55 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that gives you a claimed WLTP range of 232 miles. Then you have got the 60 models, which have got a 63 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that will give you a claimed range of 265 miles. And then you have got the 85 models, which have got an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that will give you a claimed range of up to 360 miles. Now, bearing in mind that the battery pack capacities that I have provided you are the gross capacities, not the net capacities. So, for example, you've got a 77 kilowatt hour net in the 82 kilowatt hour gross battery. It's worth pointing out that across the entire trim range, you do not have a heat pump that comes included as standard, which I do think is actually quite disappointing, specifically in this day and age. If you do want it, you'll have to splash out a whopping £1,000. And by the way, that's not even available in the entry SE model, therefore not present in the smallest battery pack configuration. Now, this heat pump is certainly very appreciated for those people who live in colder climate scenarios, because it effectively allows you to heat the cabin a little bit more efficiently by using heat that dissipated from the vehicle's electrics, for example, the battery pack. Now, nonetheless, the vehicle that is on review is the 85 line, and it's also the Edition model, therefore giving you the almost top range claim of 360 miles. Now, for my own mixed driving test, I actually netted a very impressive 285 to 305 miles. Now, that's actually incredibly good, specifically if you look at the mileage leaderboard, not only comparing it to some of the other alternatives, but also its larger sibling, the Enyaq. Yes, indeed, this vehicle is among one of the longest range electric SUVs that one can buy. And bearing in mind the vehicle doesn't even have a heat pump, at least the vehicle on test, it means that on those colder climate scenarios, I would actually able to net past 320 miles. Now, despite all of its competencies, it is disappointing that you still do not have a full one-pedal drive. For those people who are not aware, that effectively means when you lift off the accelerator pedal, the vehicle will come to a complete standstill. Now, I do have a B mode, which I've initiated right now via the center console by effectively shifting down on the gear selector. And if I were just to pull up over here and lift off the accelerator pedal at roughly 20 miles an hour, the vehicle will effectively keep on rolling at 3 to 5 miles an hour. It would have been nice if there was a full one pedal drive, because it would have meant that any city drives would have just been a little less cumbersome. Nonetheless, you have also got that D mode, which effectively allows you to coast and makes it a lot better when you're on the motorway. Now, of course, you do also have the ability of plugging it in, and via the CCS port in the 50 and 60 models, they can take up to 145 kilowatts, while in the 85 models, this moves over to 175 kilowatts. Not exactly class leading, but it still will allow you to go from 0 to 80% in roughly 24 to 28 minutes. Now, if you do connect it up to a regular wall box like you'd find at home, you can go from 0 to 100% using its Type 2 port in 8 to 12 hours. Now, it is also worth pointing out that all the models come fitted as standard with an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, and therefore if you do have access to 3-phase power supply like you'd find, for example, on the road, then via its Type 2 port you can go from 0 to 100% in 5.5 to 8 hours, of course, depending on the battery model that you actually choose. So its electric range is certainly very impressive, but another standout feature is its suspension setup, which I do think has been tuned to perfection. But if you're just going to be pottering around town and doing the school runs, or really chucking around winding country routes. This is thanks to the fact that you've got a MacPherson suspension at the front with a lower triangular links and torsion stabilizer, while at the rear you've got a multi-element axle with 5 transverse links and torsion stabilizer. You've also got telescopic shock absorbers with coil springs. The combination yields for a really comfortable driving experience, therefore allowing you to soak up a lot of the speed bumps, potholes, or indeed anomalies, and also not suffering from too much body lean when you're going around those more challenging routes. Now, it's worth mentioning over here that the Sport line with the 85 battery pack adds a sport suspension, which therefore stiffens things up a little bit and also gives you progressive dynamic steering. You can also add the driver package for an additional £650, which will give you dynamic chassis control, which goes that step further. Furthermore, you've also got the VRS model with DCC adaptive suspension available as an option, and this will really give you the utmost sense of pleasure when it comes to driving. Very much suitable for those people that really are fruity on the accelerator pedal. Speaking of which, this brings me on to performance. Now in the SE model with the 50 battery pack, you've got 125 kilowatts of power or 168 horsepower and 310 newton meters of torque. It's claimed to go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 8.7 seconds. The SEL and the Edition models with the 60 battery pack have got 150 kilowatts of power or 201 horsepower and 310 newton meters of torque. They're claimed to go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 7.7 seconds. However, in the Edition and Sport line trims and the 85 battery pack, you've got 210 kilowatts of power or 282 horsepower and 545 newton meters of torque with 0 to 60 mile an hour claim of just 6.4 seconds. Now, all these aforementioned models have got a rear-wheel drive configuration, which is certainly appreciated. However, if you want an all-wheel drive configuration, you might want to go for the VRS. This will give you 250 kilowatts of power or 335 horsepower and a whopping 694 newton meters of torque. It's claimed to go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 5.4 seconds, therefore making it the fastest in the Skoda line. Now, I had the Edition 85 battery pack model tested using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch, and as a reminder, it's got a rear-wheel drive configuration. Here, it went from 0 to 20 miles an hour in 1.78 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 2.67 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 5.91 seconds, so yes, faster than the manufacturer's 6.4 second claim, and 50 to 70 miles an hour in 2.89 seconds. I also recorded a peak acceleration of 0.54 G. Here it's also worth mentioning that the 50 and 60 battery pack models have got a top speed of 99 miles an hour, while the others, for example the 85 models and also the VRS, have got a top speed of 111 miles an hour. Now, aside from putting your foot down on the accelerator pedal, what about when it comes to braking performance? Because this is something that is actually a little bit lackluster in some of its competitors, namely, for example, the likes of Tesla. Well, here I'm actually pleased to report that when it came to doing my controlled test in a safe manner on a country road while driving at 60 miles an hour, I actually came to a standstill relatively quickly. Now, in the 85 models, you have got disc brakes with inner cooling and a 2-piston floating caliper, while in the 50 and 60 models, you have got a single piston floating caliper instead. All the models, however, have got a drum brake configuration at the rear. So next up we get onto its interior design, and here it's not going to quite compete with more premium electric SUVs out there on the market, but in the grander scheme of things and given its overall price point, I do think a lot of people who are sat within will actually appreciate its look. Indeed, it is customizable depending on what option you go for, and the use of materials on the whole around the dashboard, the door frames, and for example the stitching work and the upholstery are all very nice. It is worth considering, however, that you still do have some harsh plastic that can be found towards the doors and also the center console. Now, nonetheless, when it comes to practicality, I absolutely love the fact that the manufacturer has preserved physical buttons and dials on the steering wheel, which is the same that could be said about other vehicles from the Volkswagen group. You've also got a small little gear selector towards the center console, and just in front of that, you've also got a few shortcut buttons. Indeed, these are physical buttons allowing you to access certain settings on the infotainment system. Speaking of which, the 13-inch touchscreen display is very vivid, intuitively laid out, and also very responsive. I didn't really encounter any sort of problems like you would have found on the original vehicles that are found from the Volkswagen Group. So it's good to see that the manufacturer on the whole is actually addressing some of the concerns. However, I do find that accessing the climate control menu can seem a little bit counterintuitive, despite you actually having temperature controls and the heating controls, for example, for the seats themselves towards the bottom. Now, nonetheless, you have also got support for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay over a wired and wireless transmission, which is certainly appreciated. However, if you do not want to use this and you want to rely on satellite navigation, then here you'll actually have to go for the SEL trim, because in the entry-level SE model, it's not actually present. Now, as for the other display, you've got a 5-inch instrument cluster that's actually present across the entire trim range. It's actually very intuitive and provides you all the key driving information that you require. It is also somewhat customizable between the different menus. Now, if you do want an extension to this, you'll have to splash out between £2,250 and a whopping £4,150 on the Advanced package, which is only present in the Edition and the Sportline trims. This will give you a projected head-up display, which therefore keeps your eyes planted on the road. It also integrates artificial reality, therefore giving you a little bit of extra immersion while you're driving. You can actually disable this effect if you so wish, but I actually quite like it. It's something that I've seen in the Audi Q6 e-tron and the Porsche Macan Electric, so it's really nice to see it actually present also in the Elroq. On that note, that pretty spenny package will also give you a 12-speaker, 675-watt Canton audio system, and it's a notable upgrade over the stock 8-speaker setup that's present as standard across the entire trim range. In fact, if you want a detailed breakdown of the audio system, make sure you check it up on your pop-up banner or by following the links down in the description below or in the pinned comments. In a nutshell, the Canton audio system certainly does add to the overall audio prowess with the addition of a center audio driver and, for example, a subwoofer, and it actually does perform pretty well across the sound frequency range, but it's not exactly class-leading in comparison to some of the alternatives out there on the market, namely, for example, from the likes of Tesla. Now, for you to achieve the utmost audio fidelity and to get the most out of the audio system, you'll definitely want to plug in your smartphone, of course, if you're streaming audio directly from it. And here, you'll be pleased to know that you've got two 65-watt USB Type-C ports. Yes, indeed, they're not only used for connecting up to the infotainment system, but also for providing charge. Now, in the Edition models, you also have a 15-watt wireless charging bay with cooling, and you'll also have 45-watt USB Type-C ports at the rear of the cabin. It's a shame this doesn't come as standard across the entire trim range. This does actually bring me on to storage. First off, you've got the glove box, which has disappointingly not been optimized for right-hand drive vehicles. Then towards the center console, you have got an angled area with a non-slip material, and as a reminder, this does double up as a wireless charging bay. Then further down, you've got two cup holders, which are actually customizable due to the removable plastic insert. And then you've also got another small non-slip area, which can be quite handy for placing, let's say, a wallet or a purse. And further down, you've also got the area that's found underneath the center armrest, which is also compartmentalized, which I actually quite like. You've got a small little tray, which can be handy, for example, for a key fob. And then further down, you've also got a removable area, which can be handy, for example, for a smartphone or some smaller sized goods. Great thinking by the manufacturer. On that note, you've also got a large open area that's found underneath the center console. Handy, for example, if you've got slightly larger valuables. As for your door bins, the front two have been lined in fabric and will accommodate a 500ml bottle alongside some small to medium-sized valuables. The rear two are unsurprisingly a little bit more limited, but you do also have a pull-down armrest compartment which reveals two cup holders. Now, given it is a Skoda after all, you do also have umbrella compartments within the front doors, where in my tested vehicle there was also a small-sized umbrella within the driver's side door. Very much appreciated for those wetter climate days, for example, all of the ones that we have normally in the UK. Now elsewhere, it is also nice to see that you have got a rear storage box which is present in the second row, effectively sits in front of where the rear middle occupant would sit and place their legs. This gives you some additional storage for the rear occupants. Really nice thinking, however it's a shame that it's actually locked behind the Advanced package, which will set you back a pretty penny. Now, no matter what model you go for, you will be pleased to know that you've got 470 litres to play around with within the boot and 1,580 litres if you drop down the seats. Certainly really impressive and will definitely suffice for your weekly shops. It's also very practical. You have got a manually operated tailgate, however you've got an electric tailgate available as an option with a kick function. This is also standard in the Sport line, just as an FYI. The hatchback design is also really widely opened and therefore means that you won't have any sort of problem, at least for those of us who are just under 6 foot. And then you've also got a flat loading bay with 60/40 rear split folding seats and an integrated ski latch, therefore showing good sort of versatility no matter the size of the luggage that you're carrying. Better still, the parcel shelf has got 2 levels to play around with, where at the bottom you can also place 3 kilograms of weight on top of it. Handy, for example, if you want to compartmentalize it. Here you have also got an underfloor compartment for your cables. But it's actually genius that the manufacturer has thought about including the charging cables within a storage area that can be found within the bootload cover. This is the first I've ever come across it in an electric vehicle, but it's really nice thinking by the manufacturer. It is present for an additional £250 within the transport package and therefore is not available in the entry SE trim. If you go for the advanced package, which will set you back £2,250 to £4,150 in the Edition and also the Sportline trims, you'll also have some extra functionalities for the boot. Now, it is worth highlighting over here that you have got no frunk, but it doesn't really bother me given the amount of space you have got within the boot and also the degree of practicality that the manufacturer has loaded up on it. Elsewhere, you have also got a max towing weight of 750 kilograms for unbraked trailers, although this moves up to 1,000 to 1,200 kilograms depending on the gradient for brake trailers. So aside from transporting goods, what about when it comes to seat and comfort? Well, here I'm pleased to report that all the seats themselves are very accommodating and pretty soft, although not as soft as some of the ones that you'd find on certain Citroën vehicles. Nonetheless, I suspect a lot of people will be left pretty comfortable. At the rear of the cabin, it's also fantastic to see that headroom and legroom has been optimized. Despite its relatively compact nature, especially if you compare it to its larger sibling, the Enyaq, the vehicle does actually feel pretty accommodating. As an adult who's just under 6 foot, I had no problems whatsoever. And I suspect a lot of people will actually be surprised by the amount of headroom and legroom that you have got. It's great to see also that the manufacturer has optimized the rear footwell design, keeping it completely flat. Of course, that is if you don't go for the additional storage box. Now, while that's all very impressive, it is actually quite disappointing that the front seats are manually adjustable only as standard across the entire trim range. Indeed, over here, if you wanted a heated seat and also a heated steering wheel, you have to go for the SEL models or above. If, however, you want electronically operated seats with a massage function, you have to splash out £2,250 to £4,150 on the advanced package, which is only present in the Edition and also Sportline trims. Meanwhile, the Max package that comes in from roughly £3,200 to a whopping £5,100 will give your passenger electronically operated seats with a massage function and tri-zone control climate at the back. I do find this actually quite ridiculous because a lot of its competitors provide this as standard. Speaking of which, over here, if you want heated rear seats, you'll have to splash out an additional £350 to £600 on the winter package. And also, if you want the sun blinds at the rear with a rear privacy glass, you'll find these comprised within the advanced package. Speaking about your options, there is different ways of actually personalizing the vehicle, and this actually brings me on to its exterior design. Here you've got 19 to 20 inch alloys that come fitted as standard. If, however, you want different styled alloys, for example the 20 inch Vega rims, this will set you back an additional £620. You've got other options ranging from £555 up to £1,180, and I'll also give you larger 21-inch alloys. As for your colour options, it comes as standard in blue. If, however, you want one of the other metallic or solid finishes, it'll cost you £680, while the pictured exclusive velvet red metallic costs an additional £1,065. Now, in terms of its overall exterior profile, no matter the colour finish or indeed options you go for, I actually do love what Skoda have actually achieved over here. At the front, you've got a somewhat aggressive design. This is namely due to the somewhat droopy bonnet that feeds into the really slender and sleek looking headlights. You've also got a relatively small size grille, which is actually quite a refreshing look in comparison to a lot of the alternatives out there that have got a pretty oversized grille instead. As for the side, you've got a nice sort of streamlined look, As for the rear, you've got a slightly sporty profile thanks to the integrated spoiler and those nice looking tail lights. And yes, in case you're wondering, the VRS model takes it up a few notches by adding even more extra flair. Frankly, over here when it comes to the exterior design, I've got no complaints whatsoever. I do think it's a fantastic looker on the road, but I'd be curious to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Now, moving on from its exterior design, it brings me on to safety. And at the time of filming, it's not being tested by Euro NCAP, but one can imagine that it's going to get pretty good scores across the board. For example, the Enyaq, its larger sibling, actually did do really well, getting the full 5 out of 5 stars. Now, what I can talk about are the driver assistance systems. And here, as standard across the entire trim range, you've got cruise control with speed limiter, lane assist, emergency steering support with turn assist, front assist with assisted automatic braking, blind spot detection, traffic sign recognition, and speed assist. You've also got predictive adaptive cruise control in the SEL trim, which I actually do find does a pretty good job of keeping you at a safe distance from the leading vehicle without feeling too jerky either. While the Edition model also adds Travel Assist Plus, which consists of Emergency Assist, Lane Assist Plus with Narrow Lane Assist, and also Urban Evasive Steering Support, therefore giving you extra degree of comfort while you're on the road. Now, it's very much appreciated that you've got a bunch of driver assistance systems, although it does feel quite cumbersome that the majority of them become re-enabled every single time you power on the vehicle, and therefore means that you'll have to faff around with the infotainment system. Thankfully, the manufacturers thought about it, because at the top of it, you've got a quick toggle to disable lane assist, handy for example if you frequent the country roads. Furthermore, you can also quickly access all the driver assistance systems via another shortcut, and this will allow you to toggle on or off some of the systems. It's unfortunate over here that the manufacturer has not provided you a quick toggle via the steering wheel or the stalks like you'd find on some rival alternatives. Nonetheless, that access via the infotainment system is very handy, and therefore I suspect a lot of people will just usually do that before actually setting off on their drive. Now, moving on from that, I would also like to talk about visibility. And here at the front, it's actually pretty good, although I do think the placement of the rear view mirror is a little bit low down for my liking, so therefore takes away some of my frontal vision. A complaint I've had about other vehicles, for example from the Stellantis group, and it seems that Volkswagen group has also gone around this route. I'm not really sure why. Nonetheless, the A-pillars are a little bit chunky, but easy enough to peer around, while the side is actually pretty widely open, and the same could be said about the rear. You've also got an included wiper. Furthermore, you have got a turning circle of just 9.3 meters, therefore making it very easy to maneuver. And with the inclusion of park assist, rear parking sensors, and a rear view camera, it gives you some extra peace of mind. Furthermore, you have got front parking sensors in the SEL trims, while with the advanced package, which will set you back a pretty penny, you've also got area view, which effectively gives you 360-degree cameras around the vehicle. So with all that in mind, it brings me on to my verdict of the Skoda Elroq, and I've actually been left really impressed across the board. Sure enough, it's not quite perfect, with the list of options being quite tedious and certain things that could have been improved, but here you are getting a really stylish vehicle, both inside and out, good use of technology that's been used within the cabin, and also the fact that you can add the likes of a head-up display, which is certainly appreciated in comparison to some of its key competitors. You then also have got a really spacious first and second row, and also decent boot capacity. Better still, you've got good sort of driving dynamics, fantastic driving comfort, and more importantly, near class leading electric range. Now, given the price tag that ranges from £31,000 to £41,000, I can't actually think of many alternatives that will actually dethrone the Elroq from its pedestal. And as a result of this, it easily gets our Best Buy award. Now, I'd be curious to know what you make of the vehicle down in the comment section below, and how you feel it compares to some of its key competitors. And if you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing, and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.